Here is some things that we've lifted from uh, some locations that talk about special design instruction, exactly what it is. We've referenced the KARs here. Special design instruction is adapting as appropriate the content, the methods, the delivery of instruction to address the unique needs of the child with a disability and to ensure access of the child to the general curriculum included in the KCAS, or the Kentucky Academic Standards. So, and then methodology is defined in general by the National Center on Universal Design of Learning, or for learning, is the instructional decisions, approaches, procedures, or routines that teachers use to accelerate or enhance learning according to the goal of instruction. Based on learner variability in the context of the task, learners' social emotional resources, and the classroom climate. Methods are flexible and varied depending upon the learner's progress that is continually monitored. Content and skills are taught in varied structures through adapted materials, modeling, guided practice, independent practice, and delivered through special education services such as assistive technology, supplementary aids, accommodations, and delivered within the least restrictive environment. And then special design instruction should include the characteristics of highly effective teaching. In its simplest form, it's what the teacher does to instruct, assess, reteach the student to make progress in the general curriculum. And if instruction is required for students to benefit from a material, resource, aid, strategy, or service, it should be described as specially designed instruction. So, simply put, specially designed instruction is what we do to the content, what we do to the methods, what we do to the delivery of instruction to meet students' needs individually, to challenge students. You know, if we think about the Andrew case, we know that we're supposed to be writing ambitious goals. We have to find where the student is operating, what is their present level. We need to use lots of different sources of data to determine what that present level is. But then once we are able to get in a ballpark, we have to funnel down those skills into the discrete skills that we can apply strategies to, and that we can diagnose exactly what it's going to work for each student. And so it's individualized instruction. It's specially designed. It's what special education teachers do and should be doing to provide students with that access to the general curriculum, and then also what they do to help close those gaps that may emerge either from reduced cognition or some other type of criteria that they meet where they need this specially designed instruction. They have a performance level that is significantly below their similar age peers, and then they are going to need you to develop for them some strategies, some goals that are going to meet their needs. And like I said, they have to be challenging. We need to be real mindful and real diagnostic in finding out what their present level is. So this graphic that I'm putting up here talks to you a little bit about specially designed instruction. This came out a few years ago as a one pager from KDE, and it really just kind of gives you a graphical representation, kind of puts it in an easy to view display. Improving educational outcomes for students with disabilities through specially designed instruction. And the first one, it says the big keyword is adapting. Another big bucket is content. Another big bucket is methodology. And so when they put all that together, they say specially designed instruction means adapting as appropriate the content, methodology, or delivery of instruction to address the unique needs of a child with a disability and to ensure access of the child to the general curriculum included in the program of studies. You also have delivery on the other side of the page there. You have unique needs and program of studies. So we're letting that curriculum guide us, and we're doing standards-based IEPs, but we realize that for each student, they're all uniquely different. And for them to be provided with ambitious goals, we have to seek and find what it is that's going to work on an individualized instructional basis for these students. So we know that equality means giving everyone the same thing, and we know that equity means giving everyone what they need at that time. And so you see this representation here, and we know that equity is what we're seeking to provide. Those boxes, in my mind, provide the scaffolding and the strategies and the adaptation and the content that's changed and adapted, and the methodology that's changed and adapted, and our delivery of instruction that becomes so unique, and it represents the scaffolds that provides our students with those tools and strategies, vehicles to access the learning, and that makes it equitable for our students with disabilities. And so just wanted to share with you this one pager from KDE that came out, it's been a couple, 2 or 3 years ago, and it really does a good job of talking about what specially designed instruction is. So we kind of know the definition now, and we're kind of grounded as far as what that should look like. And really all of y'all were really on top of it anyway to start with. So when we talk about specially designed instruction, it's not enough to just define it and know what it is. We did that, but it also then gets down to what exactly are we doing with specially designed instruction? What is it that makes what we do different? What are the things that we do that are different? And so that's okay, Ashley. You just join right in. We're talking about special design instruction, and what we did, all that you missed was just a little activity where we had you define what you thought specially designed instruction is. And if you want to do that, you're welcome to put that in the chat, and we're glad to have you. So anyway, getting back to what we're talking about. So we defined it. We said it's the change to the methods, it's changed to the content, it's the change to a lot of things. But then also we feel like that it's a little more. We got to go a little deeper. We got to decide what it is that we're doing, and how we're going to do it, and how we're going to provide different types of strategies for students. So there's lots of talk about good teaching, and we know from research that explicit instruction is one of the top strategies or top systems of instruction for students with disabilities. Explicit instruction can be summed up in a little catchphrase that Anita Archer taught us all a few years ago, and it was I do, we do, you do. And the thing that she really said to me that really rung true for me and stuck with me was, yeah, we're going to do some teaching up front. And we're going to really, we're going to model for you what this new concept is. We're going to do some things to activate prior knowledge. We're going to set some, in our design of our lessons, we're going to set some real targets for you to meet. And in the meat of that lesson, we're going to provide you with the model. We're going to do, I do it, the teacher does it. And then we're going to have you practice it. And we're going to put scaffolds with your practice. We're going to give you some tools that are going to allow you to have some success and teach you in small, systematic ways that is going to make sense for you and go at your pace. And we're going to gradually relieve those strategies and those scaffolds as we move through. We know that on this screen here, there's lots of different types of specially designed instruction that's represented here. However, we know that and we were having this conversation today with our staff, well, the thing that we see is that, with the I do it, you do it, we do it, we know that Anita Archer said for for special design instructions for special needs students, for students with disabilities, we realize that the we do it part, uh, we do it a lot. We do it a lot. So what I want to do here right now is I want to just take you to um, uh, Anita Archer, who is the guru on explicit instruction. And I want to just let her talk to you a little bit about vocabulary instruction. And then we're going to circle back and talk about explicit instruction, because in every element, uh, we are going to see that lots of these, uh, and there's my old woman crush right there, Anita Archer. I love her so much. If you've ever had a chance to watch her teach, you'll understand what I'm talking about. She is just a live wire and a ball of fun when it comes to teaching. But here, I'm gonna let you watch just a little short video here on her doing some vocabulary instruction in sixth grade language arts, and this is going to bring it to life.
And we're going to go over the meanings because they're in our part. And the first word here is what, everyone? Allude. Don't write anything down, pencils down, and read the definition and go. If you elude someone, you avoid them or escape from them. So if you elude someone, you avoid them or escape from them. Read the first example sentence and go. The runaway slaves eluded the patrol who were hunting them. Okay, and so they might hide somewhere, go into a barn, go into the woods, go in the back of a cart, but they want to avoid those patrollers that are hunting them down.
Talking about, you see Anita Archer there providing explicit instruction. She is very clear, and in the lesson, she's breaking those words down. She's working on vocabulary, which we feel is so very vital for every special design instruction area. And so, but this slide here has scaffold instruction, it has strategy instruction, it has direct instruction, graphic organizers, concrete, semi-concrete, abstract model, the tiered instruction model, multiple means for practice opportunities, mnemonics, and review for fluency. So if we're talking about explicit instruction as being one of those number one uh, systems of instruction for students with disabilities, we realize that we follow that I do it, we 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 do it, and then we turn our students gradually loose when they don't need the scaffolding anymore and they can do the skill on their own. We provide lots of practice, we provide lots of immediate feedback, and we do this system consistently, and we find the strategies that will work with these folks to make sure that we're providing the students with that best type of instruction that we know works. So as we thought about the research and what the research says about special design instruction, we realized that, you know, when we look back here to these, that there were some commonalities between all of these, some things that we know that work, you know, some things that we realize that there's some threads through all of these types of strategies that are going to be present in every strategy. And so we realized that skill sequencing, understanding what to teach and when to teach it, and being real explicit in what we're teaching and the targets that we're setting and what we're going to learn and how we you know, teach the big ideas first, and we do it in a systematic way, and then we break down those skills by segmenting those skills for instruction. So we break down the skills into manageable skills that students with disabilities can have and can take in. And then we provide multiple practice attempts with accompanying feedback. We scaffold by controlling the task difficulty. We ask questions and require frequent responses. And then we go on after that, and we realize that after we ask questions, require lots of responses, and we give them the tools to do those responses. We have them writing, we have them talking, we have them listening, we have them rewriting, we have them thinking about their thinking by um, looking at, going through a system where they're going to check their work, and we really have to plan for that. But then we also, beyond that, we provide them with lots of practice. We provide them with so much practice that we know that the practice with accompanying feedback is really what works. It's what roll the sleeves up, get the skills in front of them, and make sure that we're working toward developing some success within that skill set. And when we provide multiple practice attempts, it's important that we uh, do some practice that is spaced out, that we practice the skill for a while and we go away from it and we come back to it, and we do that throughout the year. And then we make sure that everything's cumulative as well, so we have some cumulative practice that puts all those skills together, and we continue to practice that along, and kind of in a cumulative fashion. So these are the things that we see as commonalities, and we really want to think about what it is that's going to make a difference for our students. And so, um, one of the things that we realize with students with disabilities is that they have sometimes reduced cognition. So one of the things that we really feel strongly about is that we are we're programmed to do some things for students to help aid them in overcoming those cognitive barriers. So we're going to talk a little bit about that later. We here at KVEC for the last few years have really paid a lot of attention to this guy. He's a national presenter. He wrote a book about great achievement for students with disabilities. Um, do you recall the title, Dion? It's escaping me. Great achievement, great something or other.
Great instruction, great achievement for students with disabilities, and it's a roadmap for special education administrators and leaders to kind of focus on good instruction and how we support students with disabilities through good instruction.
And I really, yes, and he talks a lot about what he uses great as an acronym or as a mnemonic, and he talks about rigor and engagement and talks about how they're guided by the standards. I think that's the G part. And then, there's some others that are escaping me right now. But at any rate, it's a really good piece of work that he did. And he came up and he put us through some training initially. I think we met a few years back in Lexington, and then he's come a couple of times. Came once to Big Sandy in Prestonsburg for us, and then we had him virtually. And so, I really like a lot of the things that he says, like the way he engages his virtual instruction participants through lots of forced responses. And so one of the things that he talks a lot about is, and one of the things that I've kind of borrowed from him, one of his ideas is that if you were faced with that question by a parent, what's specially designed instruction mean to you? What's so special about specially designed instruction? What are you doing for my student in that co-teaching situation, in that resource room, wherever it is you're delivering that IEP and implementing that IEP? What's making it special? What makes me feel like you're doing things for me that I need to have done as a student, as a parent of a student with a disability? So can you answer that? Can you come up with, and he talks a lot about front loading or preloading those strategies and placing them in a toolbox. And it looks like Dion's about to bubble. Dion, you want to say something? Oh, no. Okay. All right. So sometimes I don't read those cues right. Sometimes I do. But anyway, we asked you to come up with some of yours, and then he provided us with his. And some of it I really like, and I've got it bolded on the screen. Drastically increase student practice turns and feedback. Now, when we talked about that previous slide where we had all those nice specially designed instruction pieces on there and systems and things, one of the things that we saw throughout all of those was that practice turn and feedback is a big part of it. It's a big part of every one of those. providing highly organized and sequential explicit instruction with modeling, um, guided practice with feedback, and independent practice. And then implement explicit and embedded vocabulary instruction, which I really, really love. I think it's so important that in every section you're talking about explicit and embedded vocabulary. And then he also lists the metacognitive instruction, where you're thinking about your thinking, you're learning to organize yourselves. We know our students lots of times have difficulty organizing themselves, getting things completed, getting to the bottom line and that kind of thing. But this was his 6. He said that he generally said that it's okay for you to develop your own 6 or your own 8 or your own 10 or whatever. But the gist of it was that we know that we're going to have students that come to us every year. No matter what our caseload is, we're going to experience some consistent commonalities across those caseloads. And we're going to experience things like reading difficulty or cognitive issues that where we have problems organizing visual spatial information, where we have problems remembering things. We're going to have those impacts on our ability to do math, or to have automaticity for fluency in reading, or automaticity for fluency within working math problems. We know that we're going to have some of those things. We know we're going to have some students that are difficult and have a hard time staying on task. We're going to have to come up with strategies for that. We know that we're going to face some students that are going to have some behaviors. We know that there's going to be some students that are going to need functional support, and that's something we need to think about, because that's a big piece of the purpose of the IEP. So what his whole point was, that we need to think about coming up with our own list and coming up with our toolbox, where we really got some strategies. We really got some juice in our game. We know what we're doing, and we're developing these strategies that are going to meet these students' needs. Now, we realize that every student's going to be a little different. We realize that every student's going to need some different things. That's the difficulty for special design instruction. It's the difficulty for special education teachers. We've got not only to diagnose and find out where our students are working, we've got to also be able to funnel that down to discrete skills and deliver some strategies that's going to help them, taking into consideration their cognition, taking into consideration their behavior issues, taking into consideration their health issues, all those things that play in. Maybe they're not getting enough to eat. Maybe they're not ready from a social emotional standpoint. Maybe they're not mature enough. But we know that ahead of time we're going to face some of these strategies. So we need to verse ourselves in some of these strategies. And we've used this resource from KDE for a while. We really have. We have, and I'm going to show you this down here in the corner, IEP Lesson Plan Development Handbook, and I've got it linked here. And so I'm just going to take you there for a second. It may take just a second for KDE's page to come up. And you go into IEP Guidance and Documents under your Exceptional Children's page, and you can see the pathway here: Exceptional Children, Special Ed, Forms Documents, IEP Guidance Documents. And down here at the bottom, we got the IEP Guidance Document, but we also have the IEP Lesson Plan Development Handbook, and this will put it in a PDF. And it's a little bit wonky getting it up, but I want to show you here some of the things that are included in this, if it will come up. Let's try it one more time. Maybe it's coming. That's not it. Okay, right here. Everybody able to see that okay? So this was last published in February 2014. I understand it's been under reconstruction and they're going to update it, but there's still some good stuff in here. And look here, like that slide that we showed you before. Here's explicit instruction. Here's scaffolded instruction, strategy instruction, direct instruction, structured overview, tiered instruction. multiple means for practice opportunities, concrete instructional approach, mnemonics, fluency and generalization, supplementary aids and services, and consideration for SDI and SAS. This is the schoolhouse document. This is the IEP handbook. And we really like a lot of the information that's in here. I've always thought this was an excellent document. It breaks down what specially designed instruction is for you. We've already kind of gone over that. It also will tell you about explicit instruction, and just look at that, setting the stage for a learning, clear explanation of what to do. That's all the I part I do. Then I do the modeling part, and then we do the guided practice where we check for understanding. We do formative assessment. We take out the need to give grades, and we check to see that students are doing those strategies or doing those problems or doing those activities the correct way. And we give them immediate corrective feedback under our watchful eye. And we build in scaffolds to allow them to be able to do. We provide it in a manageable chunk. We teach it in a smart way, in that we prioritize what needs to be taught first and what needs to be taught next, and that kind of thing, and give our students just a real opportunity to, learn, and so that we can close the gaps. And then we provide them with independent practice, and all the while they're doing the independent practice, and we then do an assessment and closure. So you can see that right there. And
Denny, one of my favorite things is the description or the distinction between like explicit instruction and direct instruction, because sometimes those words are used synonymously, but they are actually, two different kinds of practices. And so this helps really clarify what those definitions are, and what, like this, the one you're just scrolling through is talking about scaffolded instruction. Just
right.
Good. Like, here are the steps for how you use this this specially designed instruction. So it kind of gives us a deeper look into, when we think about writing an IEP goal and we think about the specially designed instruction, if we understand the different kinds of specially designed instruction, then it really helps us connect what that kid needs to the IEP goal and what we're going to be monitoring. But the definitions and really just the steps and the meat of what each one of these strategies are can be found right here in this document. So I really like that part.
Yeah, I pulled it down there to where you were talking about direct instruction and the difference. And so, it's right there in 6 little pieces.
Right.
Where you're reviewing and checking for understanding. You're always activating that prior knowledge and finding out what skills the students do have. And in our conversation today, Dion and I were talking about, we've got to find out what they know so that we know where to, engage them, and what they're able to do and what they're able to learn. And they've got to have something to connect their new learning to. So they have to really, and Dion was bringing that out today as we were talking about this, when you activate prior knowledge, you're doing some things that are going to allow them to anchor the new learning to the old learning, or what they bring to the table. So it's very important that we assess that, and we find out where they are. And Dion, this is probably a good spot for you, if you don't mind. We were having that discussion, and you really broke it down, and I really like the way you framed your conversation, in that, if you had the new student come in, and the new student was sitting there with you, and you had your information, but what would you do? What is it? You told me some things that you would do with that new student with a disability that's in your classroom. What do we have to do there? And I think new teachers need to hear this.
So, well, we were kind of just thinking through that process. So say we have a new student that just moves into our district, and we have some of the evaluation data. And so we know a little bit about their IQ, because we have this cognitive score. We know a little bit about some of the previous scores that they have. But the very first thing that I'm going to need to do when I have this student come to my classroom is I'm going to have to assess where they're at. And so I'll use a reading example as we talk through it. So if I want to figure out where the student's at, I'm going to have to do some kind of screening, right? I may do some phonics screening. I'm going to see where they're at. And so that way I can see what specific skills that a student might need. And then if I know what specific skills, then I'm going to be able to choose the SDI that's going to support them. So, so let's say if we look in the area of reading. So there are 5 areas and 5 components of reading, and that's based on the National Literacy Panel and the research around it. So it's broken down into phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluence, and comprehension. So if I have a student in the 5th grade that comes to me and I have to know, is it a phonics issue? Is it an issue with vocabulary instruction? So I need to drill down and find a specific skill that that kid may has a deficit in. But I also am going to know some of the strengths that the student has. But so based on what those skill deficits are, then I know where to start my instruction. So let's say I can look at a student that has some phonics. They're missing some pieces of some phonics. So maybe I assess and they know all their letters and sounds, and they can do words with consonant vowel consonant patterns, right? Like cat and hat and bat and say. Then I start looking to see what can they do beyond that. So where is the deficit? And so one example is that we had a group of kids one time that there was a student that was in, I think, the 6th grade and had a real deficit with short and long vowel sounds, right? Mm-hmm. So if we didn't drill down and know what short and vowel long sounds, that they didn't know the difference, once we taught the short and long vowel sounds, right? So we were able to teach the short and long vowel sounds. And when we did that, then the student was able to read. So they had mastery of that. So then they progressed much more quickly because we figured out what that specific skill was. So based on that, I knew what specially designed instruction, right? Do I need to use, need to use multisensory techniques? Do I have to do a very specific or explicit instruction on how to use short vowel sounds versus long vowel sounds? But it gives me as the teacher the information I need to know in order to be able to best provide instruction for that student in order to meet that goal that is outlined in the IEP. So it guides us. It guides us through a natural progression. You know, if we think about our assessments and where we're taking kids and where they're at, we can use that natural progression and that cognitive demand as they go along, and we increase that. So we move kids. We can move kids farther and more quickly if we're able to really focus in on what those skills are that they have a deficit in. Is that what you wanted me to talk about, Denny?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That was perfect. And you know, it also hits compliance a little bit in that when you're developing those, when you're sitting down there with your student and you're figuring out just where they're operating, you know, you've funneled that down to a discrete skill, and you're going to operate and work and write a goal on that skill, and you're going to set a percentage in that within that skill. But you also need to have that listed in your present levels in your academic performance. If you're talking about reading, there needs to be a number associated with that. So when you probe that student and you get that down to a discrete skill that you're going to probe that student on, you know, you're going to give them 4 or 5 probes, and you're going to come up with a baseline percentage that you're going to start with, or a baseline number that you're going to start with, and then you're going to set that goal. And we want to see that connection when we review files. We want to see that connection between that discrete skill and that number and that goal that's over there in the other part. Because when you talk about those needs in that present level, you're supposed to address them somehow throughout the rest of the IEP. And if you're going to write a goal from that need, then there needs to be some numerical, quantitative type of information along with that. So anyway, back to this document, which we love. I want to get down here to the part, and we're going to run out of time if I'm not careful. But I want to get down here to the part where we're taught, where we show you, you know, just some of the breakdown of how differentiating between SDI and SAS. And when we talk about differentiation between those things, SDI is simply what the teacher does. Okay, if you want to just define it really quickly, it's what the teacher does differently in that special education situation with the content and with the delivery and with the methodology. It's what we do different. It's what we do more intensely. And the SAS, the supplementary aids and services, are what the student needs in order to react to that special design instruction, and then also that it's going to provide them access to the general curriculum. So That's where accommodations come in some. But you see how this is broken down, and I really like this. You see on the left, you have some strategies for SDI, and then you're matching that up with that particular area that we're talking about. So you got listening comprehension here under communication. Now, listening comprehension is a vital skill. Okay, it's a skill that many of our students have difficulty with, and so you have to first be able to listen to spoken language. You have to have that receptive ability to take language in before you can be a strong reader. And so all this kind of works together. And then on the right hand side of the page, and I went down too far. On the right hand side of the page, you see that they have the supplementary aids and services listed. So you see the difference. You got guided practice on one side over here of listening strategies, corrective feedback, a digital recorder. But then you go over here and you see, can you ask yourself that question? Does the student need this? Does the student need repeated directions? Does the student need visual prompts? Does the student need extended time? That's how you can frame the difference between the two. Special design instruction is what the teacher does. Supplementary aids and services are what the student needs to work. So wanted to take you on down and just show you and look away if you get sick, you get motion sickness. There's expressive language, oral expression. Here's voice and fluency. These are typical things that you could share with your speech teacher if they don't know about it. If they're a new speech teacher and they're new to the education game, they come out of school fresh, you might share this with them. But I would have a copy of this readily available for myself as I was beginning to write new IEPs, and I was learning to do this the right way. This just really gives you, and here's the part that I want to show you is the academics. So you see the academic basic reading, and then you got the supplementary aids and services on the other side. And then it goes on through and it hits reading comprehension, it hits math reasoning, it hits, basic math calculation, it hits, some behavior. If you've got kids that are ADHD and they need on task, it talks about that. There's reading comprehension you can see on the screen. So there's lots of things in this document, and it is being revised, and it will be released at some point in the near future from KDE, and we'll have, it'll be updated and it'll have fresh information in it. But you'll see, I promise you, when they revise it, there's going to be elements that are kept because this is a strong document already, and we look to it quite a bit here as we are involved. Go ahead, Dion.
I'm just going to say, Danny, when you get back to that slide, I know that we have our behavior consultant here, we have our math consultants, and we have our literacy consultants.
Yes.
So if anybody wanted to take just a minute and jump in there and talk about
I would
any of that SDI,
Yeah.
we'll just pause right there and let everybody, if anybody wanted to jump in on that, because we were all kind of thinking and brainstorming about how to best describe that. So if any of you guys want to jump in here right now and talk about a section of this.
Who wants to?
Well, I can start, Denny Paul. Of course, I'm going to
Okay.
talk about math.
And that-
And when we're looking at math calculation and math reasoning, and that's usually the areas in special ed that we always go to, or that's the two that's broken down for us. But the big things about strategies that it, we want to make sure we're specifically teaching that student to use that strategy. And those strategies could be as simple as the CSA model, in which you had listed earlier. And the CSA model is basically the semi-concrete and
Oops, video.
Yeah, it's a video Miss Fonda
Sorry
did,
about that.
and it's a great video. So at any point in time, teachers can go back and look at this video. Miss Fonda did a great job explaining the full CSA model and how we go through that. But the big thing is you have to teach that approach. You have to teach that model. So also another thing is color coding. Teach the students to color code either numbers, and me being a middle school teacher and teaching integers, it was always obvious that some of my students they weren't visually able to see the integers in the problem, so they would overlook them and it would cause problems for them. Along the way they would get the problem wrong, so I would teach them to color code any negative numbers before we begin. Now, some teachers teach them to color code operations so that they understand the operation that's going to happen. And so that's an option too. Um, also, if you're going to use a organizer, whether it's a KWL chart or whatever the chart may be that you're going to use, teach them how to use that chart prior to, and that's always important. Another thing is scaffolding your instruction. You know, we as teachers sometimes we throw it all out there and we think they've got it, when I need to just be teaching one little section of it, and then I teach another little, I teach that same section and I just add a piece to it. So I'm scaffolding that instruction as I'm going through. And then of course, mathematics is all about examples and non-examples. So that's a huge one for us. If I'm teaching vocabulary, and let's say that I'm teaching parallel lines, I'm going to have the kids to draw parallel lines. I'm going to have them to draw something that's not a parallel line. We're going to look at pictures that are parallel lines, and we're going to look at pictures that do not have parallel lines in it. So we're going to talk about those kind of things, and we're going to talk about what the definition, and we're going to break that definition down so that they can really understand what a parallel line is. So, you know, for us, if I was looking at parallel lines, I would talk to my students about, you know, it's two lines. They're they go on and on forever, of course. They never intersect, so they never touch. And we would talk about that, you know, they are the same distance apart. And so they could go through and they could use that definition, and they could check off those check marks, and they could say that that's what it is, and they would know that's a parallel line. So that's just kind of my thing with and everybody has their own tools that they like to use. So if you're doing the CSA model, I do want to get back to this because Vonda and I are good examples of this. I love a bead string, and I taught using a bead string for most of my things. But just because I taught using a bead string doesn't mean that's the right way. It may take another thing for a student to get it. So Miss Vonda loves cubes, and she loves linking cubes, and they're wonderful, and they're great to teach with. And I even use them for integers sometimes. But a good example of that I had was I had a student who I had used the bead strings, I had used counters, I had used everything I could possibly think of to try to teach integers right. And I was at my wits' end, and it came down to a balance is what he needed for him to understand integers. So you may have a bunch of strategies in your toolbox, as Miss Dion says, or I tell them you have a bunch of strategies in your pocket. But there's going to be that student who's going to require you to understand another strategy or to take a strategy even farther.
That's a great
So
point.
be willing and open to go ahead and try something new sometimes, because that's the one thing that student may need.
Right. And Stephanie, I really appreciate your breaking down of some of those things that are important in that math area. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out overall is I think it's so important to teach embedded vocabulary across the disciplines. You can't be educated in any of these areas unless you know that vocabulary. And I think that's something that's very key in mathematics, as well as writing and reading. Of course, we know that. And then within behavior. Just understanding the vocabulary and being able to talk about it. But we appreciate that, Stephanie. Anybody else want to chime in?
I just kind of know one of the things, even though you do break it down into content specific, a lot of the strategies are that you can be applied in each of the content areas and behavior as well. Like the Stephanie was talking about the examples and non-examples for parallel lines. That examples and non-examples is a strategy that could be used in reading as well, you know, for vocabulary to get that visual, and I mean other things, especially vocabulary. What if you're trying to teach a word, you give a picture of what that word looks like, and then you give a non-example of what it isn't. And also you would use antonyms and synonyms when you're introducing vocabulary to new vocabulary words. So, and also, you know, the multisensory teaching is listed under math calculation. Well, multisensory is an approach that is also used in reading and writing. We use that, you know, because you're addressing different learning styles. So that's not really content specific either. So you want to present your, you know, through a visual, auditory, and even the kinesthetic. You'd mentioned the vocabulary. That is a really important piece as well. the mnemonic strategies, we have a link in there. It's green. I guess that's why it popped out at me to mention that one. But that's like, it breaks down more difficult concepts, and it's a strategy that they can use to break something down. And like, for example, one of them would be over in the raft strategy under the writing. That is like a graphic organizer as well. Graphic organizers are a big one for reading and writing. I think Stephanie actually mentioned that in math too. But being able to, you have to teach them how to use it. You can't just hand them a graphic organizer and tell them, here, use this. So this one is for writing. So this one, it tells you it's raft. So what the R is, what is the role of the writer? So are you gonna, are you writing it in first person as yourself? Is it going to be, as a soldier, president? What is the role of the writer? The audience, who are you writing it to? Because when you're teaching that writing process and things like that, that's important. They need to know who they're writing it to, and then the format that they're using, and then their topic. So that's just an example of that helps that. The KWL, I think maybe Dion and Stephanie both mentioned that one is really, that's one of my favorites I use for reading comprehension, because it's simple. The K, you have this before you read a passage or a story. The K is you list what you know about that topic already. So what do you already know? The W is you list what do you want to know, and you can do this, individually, or if you have one, like a very small group, you could do one, you could model it, like going back to what Denny Paul had said earlier about with Anita Archer. I do it, we do it, you do it. So you would do one, you would model how that would look, and then you would do one together, and then you would have them do one independently. So the W is what you would want to know. And then after you read the passage, then the L is what you learned in that. And then the learn strategy that's listed above it is a little bit more in depth. The N, it's the same concept, but then the N in the learn is like, now make that connection. So then after you feel that your KWL, then you can connect your new learning with what you already knew, and then just tie it all together. And then that adds to your background knowledge and increases your overall reading comprehension.
The great thing about what Chastity's talking about is using a graphic organizer. So we think about SDI and we say graphic organizer, but that's what a graphic organizer looks like in reading. That's what the graphic organizer looks like in writing. So that's what we're doing special for that student, is to help them, that providing that support or that scaffold that's specially designed to meet the need of that student, right? Because they maybe are having trouble organizing. They may have trouble with recall. So their working memory, they may have trouble with their working memory. So if we help them capture that, but I think those are really good examples of things that we are already doing, or that we use, like a mnemonic strategy or a graphic organizer, or she talked about the vocabulary instruction with explicit instruction. All of those things are specially designed instruction. We just knowing that that's what they're called, and how we connect that to that goal and what the student needs individually. And I think I'll stop right there in case Doug wants to jump in and speak about behavior.
I think one thing I'll mention real quickly would be, as far as working with behavior, one of the things to use as far as task-related behaviors, such as on task, task completion, following directions, rate and speed of work, you could use a self-monitoring checklist. And that self-monitoring checklist could be used to break down or to, I guess, scaffold or task analyze each part of that class period or whatever. You could have a checklist that the students use. You, of course, would have to teach the student how to use the checklist, but did I bring my pencil? Did I bring my books? Did I have my homework? Did I find my seat? However specific you have to get for those kids, you could use that self-monitoring checklist just to break down that class and help them. That would also help them self-evaluate on how well I did in class, did I follow the expectations and the rules, so forth and so on. So self-monitoring checklist, I think, is a big help to a lot of our kids. And that can also go back to using graphic organizers with those kiddos as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, everyone. Great job today. Let me just really quickly jump over here to the resources page. We have several linked resources here with strategies. There's reading strategies, there's writing strategies, there's math strategies. Lots of talk about specially designed instruction, practice turns, and feedback and retrieval of information. One of the things that we realize about students is that when we do our instruction, we want to try to think about cognition, and we want to think about what deficits they may have. Particularly if they're MMD or FMD students, we know that they're going to have some cognition issues, and a lot of our students do have cognitive learning and connection issues. So here's one website that, and I just take you to this. This takes you to a Google site that's view only, but it just breaks down retrieving information from a blank slate. And I think you can work that into your bell ringers. You can work that into your exit slips. You can work that into your lessons in formative assessment, where you're having students really try to retrieve information and build those connections that they may not be having due to the diminished cognition. And so, I just wanted to share that one with you really quickly and show you this resources page. We're here for you in terms of, our staff is well versed in all these strategies. We're happy to share these strategies. We're happy to work with you on these strategies. Another good website that I come across that I want to share with you that has some really interesting things about the reading in the brain and strategies for decoding and fluency is this LD at School website. It's really a neat website. It breaks down word attack, reading, decoding, reading competency. It goes into comprehension. It goes, vocabulary instruction. It first talks about the neuropsychology of the brain, talks about fluency. But I wanted to get down here and show you just one real quick site that is just, I just really feel like it's fantastic. And so whatever you type in over here in the search bar, if it's reading fluency, it'll take you to reading fluency. And it's just really a good site in my mind. And it has some graphic organizers that are on, like a one pager for you. And I was going to try to show you that, but I seem to have lost my way there just a little bit. But anyway, it is really a strong website in terms of breaking down the things, the strategies in those discrete skills that Dion talked about. If you're teaching reading, you really got to know what it is within comprehension that's causing the comprehension issue. Is it the connections they're making? Is it fluency issues? Is it phonemic awareness? What is it? So it's really those are the things that we should be doing for specially designed instruction. We're running late on time here, and so we're going to have to close it down for today. We really appreciate you being here, and we encourage you to meet with us each month. We do this new Emerging Teacher Cadre each month, second Wednesday of the month, 3:30 to 4:30. We also make this available asynchronously by placing it on our website. And so we'd be happy to share anything that we have with you. We can make this presentation available and provide you with these links to all these strategies. Keep in mind the schoolhouse document is very important, and it's a great place to start if you're looking to learn more about special design instruction.